By the time I finish this sentence, 3 people will have died from starvation. One of them will be a child. That's over 8 million people a year dying from hunger. And if the 10 richest people on earth shared just 10% of their wealth, they can end world hunger. We have normalized suffering and made them seem impossible to solve, and I want to talk about that. Let's get started. My face gets messed up very easily, so luckily I don't have to be in front of the camera most of the time. Kill me. Where I come from, there's a phrase, 每个人要吃一点苦. It translates to everybody needs to suffer a little. It's a phrase usually used by people who want to tell someone else their suffering is hurt, but they should really suck it up. Or as an excuse to hurt others, under the guise that suffering is part and parcel of living. Because everyone suffers, and someone out there is suffering worse than you right now. So you shouldn't be complaining about your suffering. There are arguments like this in every culture in the world. Stop complaining. Don't you know some people don't even have food? And you know what? I don't buy it. I don't buy it that suffering is necessary. I don't buy that it's some natural part of life. If we just look back at the history of humanity, heck, even just the last 3 years, we can see that while pain is something experienced as part of being alive, vital to our survival even, suffering is always something inflicted. Take COVID for example. Yes, getting the virus is a luck of the draw and the pain that comes from it is inevitable. But the suffering that we as a society went through could have been mitigated, if not all out prevented. There's something called the R0 value that we can calculate for how infectious a disease is. If reduced below 1, a virus can be contained, if not completely eradicated even. We can reduce that value by reducing spread. One person wearing mask reduces spread by about 30%. If everyone in a group wears it, the number reduces by 79%. COVID has an R0 value of 2.5 to 3.28, which means that for every one person who catches COVID, it will spread to 2.5 to 3.28 other people. This means that there was a point in just the first year of the pandemic where if everybody just wore masks and kept their distances, we could have saved millions of lives and curbed the virus in under a year. 66 million people now have long COVID. 6.9 million people have died. All because some of us didn't want to wear masks or stay indoors. Some of us chose this. People were saying that's just how it is, saying suffering is part of life, while they were the people choosing to inflict the suffering on others in order to satisfy their own self-interest. And if you're one of those people and think I'm being harsh, it's been 3.5 years, so on behalf of everyone who died and are suffering from long COVID right now, you. Man, that escalated quickly. Perhaps one might argue that suffering is needed to grow empathy, in which case I want to introduce you to the industry of poverty tourism or slum tourism. Poverty tourism is the specific phenomenon where people travel to a place poorer than theirs, specifically to experience a separate level of economic wealth. And while this might be an extreme example, one cannot deny that this is a microcosm of this specific argument. People are going out of their way to experience others' suffering and disregarding the complexity of the economic impact of these industries because quite frankly, a lot of them are f***ing stupid. I want to specifically ask the question, which part of this teaches empathy? Do you need to go out to see people suffering in order to empathize with them? Because I don't. I don't need others to suffer for me to learn a lesson. I can just do it the normal way by meeting other people or education or heck, given how lazy I am, I can just watch TV. For young people, a TV is this thing that we use to watch shows on without the internet or computers. Damn it, I think I just winked both eyes. There's a reason why schools and diverse casting in shows reduces a person's level of bigotry, because you get to know what other people are going through just by, having empathy in life. And if you think that going on these slum tourism trip is good because it helps the economy there, here's a suggestion. You can just give them money. You can just go there and give them money without exploiting them for a show. It's in the description. They are poor, they don't have money, and now they have money. Give them money. Heck, volunteer. There are volunteer groups everywhere. You can travel somewhere, help reduce suffering, and have empathy. Wow, what a novel idea. I know it's gross to work during your vacation, but maybe it's grosser if you go there to gawk at other people's suffering. Or maybe you're saying that when you suffer, you empathize with others better. Personally, I think that's just called masochism, but I'm not shaming the kink. If that jacks you off, all the more power to you. But outside of the amazing pleasure for the few of you that get sexual relief, the rest of us, what the hell? Because I don't know about you guys, but I don't need to be shot to know I don't want to be shot. I don't need to be angry to know I don't want to starve. Heck, I don't need to step on Legos to know I don't want to step on Legos. That is empathy. It's not understanding others suffering by you suffering, but rather just understanding that pain is bad. And if someone else is in pain, that's bad. Unless it's your king, then go for it. Remember your safe word. Tell me in the comments how many times a week you come from having your ass spanked. I'm not saying you have to give all your body and soul to a cause. You can just help by living your everyday life a little differently. There's no need to become some sort of saint. By the way, Mother Teresa, our go-to saint, kind of a terrible person actually. She believed that people had to suffer like big boy JC did, to the point that she called suffering a gift from God to a leper's face. And the millions of dollars she received in donations and awards didn't go to her clinics to improve medical care, but rather to convents around the world to increase her religion's conversion rate. That's messed up. Thankfully, the churches aren't doing that anymore. Mother Teresa equated the conversion to a religion as an ease of pain and suffering, but when she was in pain, she went to a doctor. A really expensive doctor too, apparently. And a person's individual faith aside, it really goes to show that the problem isn't that people don't understand starvation is a thing. The problem is they think people can access cake as easily as bread. That everyone, regardless of wealth, have the same access to pain relief as everyone else. Reducing pain is not the same as reducing suffering. You can be in pain and not have to suffer. Better access to healthcare or even just having someone to take care of you when you're sick can reduce suffering, which is why well-funded public education, healthcare, and housing are so important. There are societal changes we can enact to reduce suffering, and if you're saying these things are too hard or expensive to achieve for your country, then I have news for you. Regardless of country, you've done some of these things before. Every single time a minimum wage is implemented anywhere is us going out of our way to reduce suffering. Schools and teachers, doctors and nurses, even things like cemeteries and roads. The bloody hole in the ozone we fix, these things aren't trees. They didn't just grow naturally in the dirt. We as people decided to make them happen so that we can solve specific issues of suffering. Remember smallpox? I bet you don't, because we killed it. Adjusted for inflation, the world spent 5.5 trillion US dollars of today's money on it. And that might seem expensive until you realize that because we don't have to deal with smallpox, that cost is recuperated in economic benefits every month. It's like people who don't have to suffer gets the energy to do stuff. For every month that we don't deal with smallpox, we get money, which, as we all know, is real. Ah shit, I winked with both eyes again. But we can do what we did with smallpox again, but for other things. It is estimated that if we spend $22 billion a year for 14 to 15 years, we can end world hunger. And that seems like a lot, until again you realize that's 16 times less money than it took to end smallpox adjusted for inflation. And right now, 2 people in the whole world has a combined net worth to do just that. These dickheads can choose to end world hunger instead of embarrassing themselves on their own websites and stopping their employees from peeing. We chose this. Well, they chose this, but we as a people, as a species, chose to value this over the end of suffering. I'm going to diverge this video a little with a story. Recently, Singapore experimented with a temporary gender-neutral toilet, and I am proud to say that if I had to grade Singaporeans' response to this, you all get Fs. You get an F, you get an F, you guys are fine. But that's not the story I want to talk about. During the news cycle for this gender-neutral bathroom, a person I know actually said that if a trans person asked him to use their pronouns, he'll ask them to call him, and when the trans person failed to call him by the right, he'll accuse them of a hate crime. And I have a question for people like that. What did you gain? Did you defend your honor, protected your integrity, protected your beliefs? Because while you feel good about owning the SJWs, that trans person you just misgendered and belittled is likely feeling these, probably in that precise order. And you'll realize that at the bottom of that list, there is a little, shall we say, ending. And was it worth it? Was making this person psychologically suffer worth it to you? Did you learn empathy? Do you think this made the person stronger? Do you think that changed their view? Do you think that your asinine insult made this trans person whose identity is constantly under attack by the entire world stronger? Did your singular insult for a situation you made up as a power fantasy make them stronger than a person constantly fighting for acceptance by entire societies? Or did it just give you a personal rage boner, make you feel like a manly man? Because misgendering someone on purpose requires actual hate. You are insulting a person's identity. It's like if I called you a or you're angered, maybe sad, maybe feeling misjudged, because you are not those things, and I said them for no other reason than to hurt you and feel good about myself, and of course to prove a point. Causing other people to suffer requires selfishness and or hate. I'm not a you plead. Call me by my name. My name is John, you begged. Well, if you want me to call you by the name you chose, then you need to call me. I know we've been talking about big stuff so far: international religions, billionaire man babies, sweeping systemic cultural bigotry. And it might seem like as individuals on the ground, we can't do anything to help in the larger scale other than to be nicer to others. And most of the time, that's true. Personal actions like going vegetarian, recycling, or reducing energy usage aren't going to solve the suffering they were meant to solve, and in fact are more likely giant corporations' attempts to make more money or shed responsibility. And I know you, my viewers, are incredibly beautiful and smart enough to know that the best thing to do here is to tell your lawmakers to get their shit together and save the world by passing proper regulations. But there is one thing you can do on a personal level that will actually have a significant, measurable effect on improving the world. Are you ready? Because it all starts with this one question. Do you drive a car? Because a car is one of, if not the biggest cause of societal suffering on an individual scale. In return for causing external suffering, you get back internal self-satisfaction. Basically, owning a car hurts other people in return for making yourself comfortable, and is the golden symbol of needless suffering that we just chose to have. Of course, I'm not talking about people who are disabled or the pitiful human meatbags that live in the urban transport nightmare hellscape of Australia, Canada, and the US of A. If you live in those places or any number of developing countries, you don't really have a choice. The infrastructure there sucks for people and you need a car. But for everyone else living in a dense population with decent public transport, owning a car is literally one of the worst and most harmful things you can do to others. A car is actually the greatest source of noise and air pollution in a city. It doesn't matter if you're driving an electric or gas car, because most of the noise comes from the wheels interacting with the road. If you are living next to a frequently used road, you will experience more mental health and physical problems, including anxiety and difficulties breathing. Unless you are in a car, in which case you don't have to care about any of those noise or air pollution that normal walking pedestrians have to deal with. You just sit here in your car in your own recycled fart, in comfort, listening to the sound of your own engine and probably the music as well. Nothing outside can harm you, not even noise. Outside noise barely reaches here. However, the noise from your engine and the noise from your music can get outside to annoy other people, because that's how sound works, and that's the privilege of owning a car. Being able to annoy other people while suffering minimum damage yourself. Cars are also an absolute disastrous waste of space. The road used for cars are also almost exclusively not used for anything else. You can't conduct business on them or rest on them. If you're driving, you can't play games or do work or listen to music, just drive. Any sports performed on roads is dangerous, and other form of transit that can take them is minimal. There are no plants you can grow or stores you can open. The majority of actions performed on roads are just driving. The space that cars take up are also atrocious in comparison to any other kind of transport, which becomes even more apparent when you realize that most cars aren't filled to capacity like buses or trains, but average only 1.5 occupancy at any time, which, if my math is correct, means drivers are actually serial killers who cut their victims in half and stuff the bodies in their cars. Oh, I'm just really high. Cars take up so much space. They have entire buildings dedicated to them that are empty most of the time. Car batteries are incredibly toxic when discarded, and they eat gas in the same way I eat pizza. It can't fly like a plane. It can't carry stuff like a van or train. Ooh, that rhymes. Its average occupancy is the same as me giving a child a piggyback ride. Every other form of transportation is just overall better in some form or another. And while drivers or cars are anywhere between 1.5 times more likely than motorcycles to be involved in traffic accidents and 18 times more than buses, they are 5 times less likely to die from it. Basically, cars are the most likely cause of traffic accidents, but the drivers don't pay the price. It is so bad that traffic accidents are the 8th leading cause of death in the world, and the leading cause of death for people between the ages of 5 to 25. You know, the ages where you don't drive cars, and those statistics are even worse in more car-centric countries like the US. So why target cars to reduce suffering? Because it's something we can reach for. Unlike solving world hunger, curing aging, or ending all wars, all of which we can also theoretically do now, by the way, cars are young enough in the cultural zeitgeist that we can still individually fix them. We haven't integrated them into our culture and lives yet to the point where they are inevitable. And like all the other problems I've mentioned in this video, solving just this one will cascade into reducing the suffering caused by a whole book of issues. We don't have to solve all the world's suffering immediately. We can start with just this one. There are already people, groups, and even countries that are doing it. Because suffering stems from problems we cause, like someone refusing to use a trans person's pronouns out of spite, or an economic system we prop up that lets rich people hoard enough money to cure death. If we just try to be a little nicer, if we just allocate a little of our resources better, or change the arbitrary societal rules and economic system that we invented, we can actually fix our mistakes and shortcomings. We can end suffering. Hopefully forever. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. The audio I recorded for the outro got corrupted. I really need a new recorder. But like, share, subscribe, comment, and patreon.com/Aiden_. Thanks, bye.